Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thank you for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss the cost of living in freedom, which is bravery. And with the current administration's most recent rollouts of jab mandates, we're seeing the pushback again of the states versus the feds, and we're seeing these issues play out in front of us. But I think what people are really facing right now is a test of their own mettle and a test of their own principles and convictions. So with the rollouts that have come down from the federal government, essentially any entity that takes any federal money, healthcare-wise, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that, employees of organizations who take federal dollars are basically screwed when it comes right down to it. Although the mandate does make provision for religious-based exemptions, the challenge is that a lot of these different companies are denying people's religious exemptions, which is just ludicrous, of course. But also, we're looking at this nexus, this huge tangle of issues in front of us. And really, when it comes right down to it, we are going to answer the question in the United States in this generation, whether or not we're going to be slaves or we're going to be free men, whether or not we're going to be brave men or whether we're going to be cowards. And so when I look at the cost that's going to be calculated, this cost is going to be in the freedom of our children. Although I think a lot of people, when it comes right down to it, don't care about the freedom of their children in their mind. They just care about the relative affluence and ease of life for their children. But what they don't understand is that these sacrifices that they're making today, daddy's choosing to roll up his sleeve in order to keep food on the table, like all that's doing is delaying the inevitable. You may in your mind think that it is a reasonable sacrifice for you to make, to roll up your sleeve so that you can pay your bills. But what you don't understand is that paying your bills is locking the chains of slavery around your children. So you have to put it in perspective here, what it means to live in the land of the free. And I ask you, if we capitulate with these mandates, if corporations of 100 people or more capitulate to these mandates en masse, what do you think it's going to do to smaller organizations? The vaccine mandate that the Biden administration has rolled out, they're already talking about trying to force this upon private corporations of people 100 and less. It will not stop here. I ask you, at what point has this administration been reasonable in anything that it has undertaken related to a public health crisis? What have they done that has been reasonable and respectful of private individuals' rights and of the rights that are supposed to be safeguarded in blood that the Constitution enumerated? How have they been reasonable? When do you think they're going to stop hitting you in the face? And I got news for you. They're not going to stop abusing you until you cease giving them permission to. So, how is this going to walk out? What is this going to look like in the days moving forward? There is going to be, and there has already been, a swath of healthcare professionals who forget it. Forget it. And I think this is good. Oh, how could you say that, Patriot Nurse? Patients need to be taken care of. Patients' rights don't get safeguarded if their healthcare providers' rights are destroyed. Because I can't be an advocate for my patients' rights if my own rights are being destroyed. So what's going to happen is that you are going to see, and have been seeing, a massive exodus of anyone who is a free thinker, anyone who doesn't walk lockstep with the Politburo, who holds a medical license. They're going to be leaving en masse. And I got news for you. I would sooner tear up my nursing license into 1,000 pieces than be coerced into rolling up my sleeve. No one is going to tell me what I'm going to do with my body and my healthcare choices. So the impact of this is going to be felt in the burgeoning of new enterprises. And I got news for you. I don't think they're going to be in the United States. I see a blooming, freedom-minded healthcare market in Mexico. Over the border. It's been this way for several years with regards to alternative treatments and methodologies for death sentence healthcare diagnoses here in the United States. When the white coat establishment says, yeah, whatever, go home to die, a lot of people say, well, there's a doctor who's doing this over the border in Mexico, I'll give that a whirl. And so they're electing to do that. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to see massive expatriation in the United States of the middle and higher level educated groups, and certainly of higher level earners. That's already been happening. But what this looks like very similarly to me is what happened in the lead up to the Khmer Rouge and also into obviously various different historical socialist government coups that happened. The people that see this ahead of time, who have the means, the wherewithal, the education, the intuition to act actionably upon things, they're already doing it. So what's going to happen is that, and people say, oh, this is so extreme, over just rolling up your sleeve. It's not about just that. What you are seeing is a total fundamental takeover of our economy. You are seeing command and control in the United States federal government, turning us into a centrally planned economy. Some would argue we've already been that way, but this is heavy-handed. This is no longer just playing along nicely. This is complete command and control of private enterprise at the helm of unelected bureaucrats. The unelected bureaucrats are doing this to people. And so, when it comes right down to it, I think a lot of people are just going to say, what, forget it. Forget it. There are plenty of other places in the world that are freer. Oh, but you don't have the right to keep and bear arms. Can I ask you a question here? What good is the right to keep and bear arms without the ability to use them? Your willingness to fight is always going to trump your ability. And for being the most armed populace in the world, it seems to me that whenever someone actually does defend themselves, that right is functionally nullified through the judicial penalization process. A person doesn't have the right to keep and bear arms if it's going to bankrupt him in order to defend himself legally from having to defend himself physically. So you got to ask yourself, is this right a functional right? And if it is not a functional right, it may be a right on paper, but in practice it's nullified, then what's the point of being in the United States? A lot of people are going to be asking this question. And when you consider, on top of the Biden administration's vaccine mandates, the penalization of people who are productive and people who make money in our country, with this bill that they want passed now with basically entitlements ad nauseum and spending, and jacking up capital gains, people who make money, who pay taxes, are looking around at this and saying, why am I paying for my enslavement? Why am I cutting you a check when 61% of the American populace on average doesn't pay taxes? Why in the world am I funding the beast? If I can't cut the head off of the beast, at least I can starve it of its food, which is my tax dollars, so then I'll leave. So all of this to say that this vaccine mandate is going to have far-reaching implications. It's going to have ripple effects that are further going to cripple our economy, to disincentivize productivity, but also you're going to see 10th Amendment issues rear themselves again, because frankly, it is not within the purview of the federal government to do what it's doing right now. It is unconstitutional and it is illegal. They are getting away with it because at this point, they are not more afraid of coming to work than they are of perpetuating their tyranny. And until these people are more terrified to walk out of the doors of their home and get on the subway in DC and go to work each day, until they are more afraid of doing this than showing up to work to strip your rights away, this is going to continue. The land of the free? Only if we're brave. And so what does this mean functionally for the economy? What does this mean right now? It means that people who have, for instance, smallish, medium-sized companies who employ between 25 to 50 people, they're going to be reconsidering whether or not they're going to grow their company, because who wants to have all this additional hassle associated with enforcement that's unconstitutional in the first place? If I have a company size of 75 people and I'm looking to expand, why in the world, what possible incentive do I have to do that at this point? Not if I value freedom. What, I'm going to pay more taxes? What, I'm going to have more government involvement? What, I'm now going to have to violate the rights of my employees and take on more hoops to jump through from a federal regulatory standpoint? Forget it. Peace out, USA. I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to wherever. There are too many options in this world for people to continue to have the boot of the federal government on their neck. And not everybody values the right to keep and bear arms, but a lot of people value the right to not have themselves jabbed with God knows what against their will. So for people who are not in high earner categories, who are not in medium to, decent sized growing business categories, what are we to do? Well, there's a few options. This is not legal advice, and I'm not giving you any kind of financial planning advice. I'm just thinking out loud here on this. If you are in a line of business that currently is falling under heavy regulatory mandate, then you have a few options at this point. Leave your job that takes federal funding, or try and seek a religious exemption, which the Biden administration's new mandate says that they will force people to accept. You can roll the dice with religious exemptions. And I'm not making like hours-long videos on religious exemptions because there's a lot of people who've done it before. I've already addressed this subject. But it's something that you're going to have the nads and the discipline to go and look up your state-by-state rules, because it's a state-by-state thing. It's a 10th Amendment issue. It's not a federal government issue insofar as the exemptions go, but definitely the right to be free from religious persecution is. So a lot of people are going to be exiting this if they roll the dice unsuccessfully and don't get their waivers. And a lot of people are going to be leaving healthcare and other entities associated with federal dollars. They're going to be seeking out trades that allow them to be self-employed. But can I put this to you? I think in a weird sort of way that this may actually be a good thing. People having to make the decision to leave being an employee and venture out into being self-employed, into basically hawking their own wares and being their own boss. On the surface level, I think there's going to be a positive turn for this, and I want you to hear me out. Thank you for staying with me to the point that you have. This is the beta test for what's coming. And I fully believe that people who are being submissive to particularly God, if they're from a religious standpoint, if not wanting to roll up their sleeve, but people who are being disciplined from a sense of moral uprightness and not wanting the government to be able to have this type of power and not willing to give it away, there's going to be blessing in this, because this is the beta test for it. And for people who elect to self-select out of it, people who elect to look at alternative ways of earning their income and really live their principles, you're going to be, in my opinion, 18 months to 2 years ahead of the big thing that's coming down the pike. You're going to be situated firmly because you've already made this transition. And not only will you have made this transition, but you'll have made it ahead of the curve, which means you're already set down roots when everybody else is trying to flood in and figure out what to do. Finally. Principled people pay a price in the short term for standing on their convictions, but in the long term, there is blessing for it. So really the situation, in the grand scheme of things, is unchanged. You either have principles or you don't. You either let someone put the boot of tyranny on your neck, or you throw it off and you kick them and you punch them right back in the face. Or you self-select out of their system entirely and say, peace out, whatever, I'm going to watch the world burn. All of these are viable options. The question is which one is right for you. So we still have years worth of these people in office if we elect to tolerate them, and if we elect to continue giving them power and giving them tax dollars. There's a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made. But I want to encourage you, because we actually just entered today a new month, a biblical new month, the month of Kislev. And this month is a month of miracles. But it is also a month where historically you got to put up or shut up when it comes to dealing with tyranny. But when you show up to the fight, God fights for you if you're fighting on his side. It's not, is he on our side? Are we on his side? In this month, we have an opportunity to live our principles and to walk in faith. For instance, with the Hanukkah story, there's this really great children's book called Maccabees, and it's about the Hanukkah story. And the refrain in the book, sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and do it too. In this book, it drives home the point with children about the necessity of standing up to tyranny at times with arms. That's the nature of history. And the issue is, are you going to have faith to do it? Has this line been crossed where your faith is being violated and you know that you have to stand up for what's right? When you think about the story of the Hanukkah Miracle, some people argue that it's apocryphal and some people say it's legit, but the story remains, and it is a good picture and a parable for us today. That when the temple was retaken after it had been desecrated by the Greeks, The Maccabees, the Hebrew hammer comes back to set everything up again and put the menorah back up in the temple. They have oil that is consecrated, and only special types of oil that's been consecrated and that's been basically sealed and approved can be put into the menorah because it's a level of holiness, right? So they don't have enough for the entirety of the time that they need it. So you know what? There's enough here for right now, so we're going to go ahead and put it in and light it up. And if the Lord wants it, then it'll continue. The principle here is you show up. You show up to the fight. You show up and perform your responsibilities. You are responsible for the effort, and God is responsible for the outcome, and not just when it comes to a job. People think that an employer is the one who pays their check and an employer is the one who pays their mortgage. I got news for you. If you are a person of faith and you are a Bible-believing individual and you have put your faith and trust in the God of the Bible, it's His responsibility covenantally to provide for you if you are obedient to Him. He will show up for you if you are obedient to Him. He is a rewarder of those who keep His commandments. It's a fallacy to think that your bills get paid from an employer and that to get your bills paid you have to violate your conscience. Who gave you this conscience? Who gave you these morals? Who gave you these principles? Where do they come from? Do you think the God who gave you these principles is going to smile on you for violating them to get your bills paid? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Is He God or is He not? What type of God is He? Questions to ask. If we're going to live in the land of the free, then we're going to have to be brave. I hope it was helpful for y'all today. If you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also stay with me and support me on Patreon, Subscribestar, Cryptocurrency, and PayPal. I got links below. If you want to train with me, which I highly recommend that you get prepared with beans, bullets, and band-aids, but if you want to get the band-aids area covered for your preps, particularly in the skills area, train with me. I got an online course, 4 hours, $129. That link is below. If you want to train with me in person, you got a few options. Salt Lake is sold out. Dallas, Keller area, Texas is coming up in December. 4-day class available there. Knoxville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, Columbus, Ohio, Jacksonville, Florida, and I think I'm going to add Kalispell, Montana. Y'all, if you want to get trained, I recommend you do it because the number of qualified healthcare professionals who value freedom and are willing to respect your rights, that is de facto going to evaporate. You're going to have to be able to take care of your family yourself. That is a fact. I hope it was helpful for y'all. Have a very blessed weekend. Chodesh Tov. Happy new month, Kislev, and have a wonderful and restful weekend, guys. For now, it's Patriot Nurse sign off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.